Brings us number 8 to House Bill 2689 by Chairman Doggett. We got a motion and a second. Chairman Doggett, I do not show any amendments. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Good morning to you. If you would, I'd appreciate your indulgence for just a few moments here. The 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees to the states and their people all powers not granted to the federal government elsewhere in the Constitution, and reserves to the state and people of this state certain powers as they were understood at the time that this state was admitted to statehood. The guarantee of those powers is a matter of contract between the state and the people of this state, and the United States as one of the time that the compact with the United States was agreed upon and adopted by this state and the United States. The 9th Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees the people rights not granted in the Constitution and reserves to the people of this state certain rights as they were understood at the time this state was admitted to statehood. The guarantee of those rights is a matter of contract between the state and the people of this state and the United States as of the time that the compact with the United States was agreed upon and adopted by this state and the United States. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution reserves to the people the right to keep and bear arms as that right was understood at the time that this state was admitted to statehood. And the guarantee of the right is a matter of contract between the state and people of this state and the United States at the time this compact with the United States was agreed upon and adopted by this state and the United States. The Tennessee Constitution clearly secures to Tennessee citizens and prohibits government interference with the right of individual Tennesseans to keep and bear arms. Members of the committee, what I just read to you was something in 2009 was a bipartisan statement of intent in Tennessee Code. It created a new chapter, Chapter 54, called the Tennessee Firearms Freedom Act. Today, House Bill 2689 seeks to add another section to the Tennessee Firearms Freedom Act. Everything that is listed in this bill is currently found in code. What we have done is compiled different sections of code here and brought it into the Tennessee Firearms Freedom Act. This bill creates a civil action against any government entity, official, employee, or agent that infringes upon a person's right to bear arms under the Tennessee Constitution or that of the United States Constitution. It specifies that a violation of a person's right to bear arms by a government employee creates special remedies that are listed in the bill. And it further specifies also that if law enforcement is acting within the color of the law, meaning that they are lawfully just in their actions, that it is not a violation of any of this legislation. And with that, I'm ready for questions.
Thank you, Chairman Doggett. Members, you've heard the explanation of the bill. Do we have any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, Representative Grills, you was first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Doggett, for bringing this. Go back, you said something about you're not creating anything that's not already in code, you're just bringing it all together. Is that correct?
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Yes, sir, that is correct. All the remedies that are listed within this legislation are already listed in Tennessee Code annotated. We have pulled from different parts of the code to put it all in here that the remedies of any citizen of this state would already have under law. We're just combining it all right here in the Tennessee Firearms Freedom Act that was established, I believe, in 2009, that would have all this information there for the citizens of the state.
Okay.
Chairman Grills.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Parkinson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And under the spirit of your legislation, any government, it creates cause for any government entity that interferes with someone's right to bear arms. And then you mentioned law enforcement. Is there a presumption that for law enforcement in the direction of the spirit of your legislation?
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. We're not creating any kind of new cause of action. It's already there in the code. We're just bringing it from where it is in the code, leaving it in the code there, but just putting it into this legislation here in the Tennessee Firearms Freedom Act. As long as law enforcement is operating within the law, there's no reason that there should be any type of civil action that is brought forth.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you. Thanks. So I understand. So you just pulling it all together and moving it to a different title, under a different title, or in a different space in the code? Is that what we're doing?
Chairman
What
Doggett.
already exists?
We think of it as a copy and paste. We're copying out of the section of code that it's currently in, leaving it there, but we're combining everything to a more appropriate section, a chapter here, Chapter 54 for the Tennessee Firearms Freedom Act.
Okay, so it's a cleanup bill. Is
Chairman
there
Doggett.
anything, I'm sorry, is it just a cleanup bill? Is there anything different that we're doing other than what already existed?
Would you like to go out of session? We got legal here that needs to clarify something anyway. So with objection,
go
we'll go
ahead.
out of section. Legal, you're recognized.
Elizabeth and Sonia Legal Services. So this bill would establish a private right of action that could be brought against any government entity, official, employee, or agent. There is a separate private right of action in Section 3917.13.14G that can be brought against a local government entity, official, employee, or agent. So this would be able to be brought against a wider group because you'd include any government official, so that implies state and federal officials as well. And that the existing private right of action entitles a person to declaratory and injunctive relief and damages, whereas this one includes actual damages or statutory damages of $250 a day and punitive damages. And then additionally, this action in the bill could be brought by a person whose rights have been violated, an entity that engages in advocacy for the protection and furtherance of the rights protected by section. Both those groups are mirrored in the existing private right of action, and this one also allows the action to be brought by any other person or entity that will fairly or adequately represent the interests of those whose rights are protected by the state or federal constitutions. So there are a few differences between this and the existing private right of action.
All right. Chairman Doggett, you got anything for legal on this before we, Representative Parkinson?
Thank you.
Anything for legal?
No, nothing for legal.
Okay.
Oh, well, yeah, yes. The law enforcement portion, how does, and maybe that was already in the code previously, is there anything different about that? Or is there a presumption for those in law enforcement if they confiscate a weapon from somebody?
Legal, you're recognized.
So the bill just refers to the current procedure for ouster under Title IX, Chapter 47, so that doesn't change existing law. It's just a reference that could come into play. And then it also refers to the offense of official oppression, and again, it just references that criminal provision.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple things. You'd mentioned that this has to do, this creating a new cause of action, and you mentioned two sections of the code. So my question is this: typically, actions that are brought against municipalities or local governments are handled by maybe an administrative law judge or some fashion of that nature. Some causes of action are brought to like Chancery Court or Circuit Court, state courts. So with regards to this having to do with two sections of the code being brought together, are we going to have a conflict with regards to how this cause of action is handled? With regards to venue, are we going to have an issue with standing as well?
Legal, you're recognized.
Generally, actions against local government or local government employees are governed by the GTLA, the Governmental Tort Liability Act. The existing private right of action provides that it is notwithstanding Title 29, Chapter 20, or Title 9, Chapter 8. So that means it's not governed by the Governmental Tort Liability Act. This bill does not contain that language, so any claim under this bill would be subject to the GTLA, but they'd be two separate actions. So a person, I guess, could choose whether to file a claim under 3917.13.14G or under this newly created section in Title 4, Chapter 54.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Is this going to open up the door for claims that typically go through the GTLA to be heard by an administrative law judge now if this bill passes, that could be heard in state court, circuit, or chancery court?
Legal, you're recognized.
And I guess what I'm asking is this: is this going to allow for venue shopping?
And you're recognized again.
I think it might do the opposite of what you said. So these claims might be subject to the GTLA, whereas claims under the existing private right of action are not subject to the GTLA. So it would set up a process where a person could choose one or the other, but it would just be the reverse of kind of what you set out.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman Farmer, any follow-up?
That's all I have.
Representative Bolzo, you're next for legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Farmer addressed part of what I was going to ask Ms. Ansonia. But if we just look at the law the way it stands right now, let's say some state actor confiscates someone's firearm in violation of the Tennessee Constitution and the U.S. Constitution, that person could file a number of actions. You could file an action in federal court under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 for a civil rights violation. You could file an action under the GTLA, and then you could also file an action under 3917 1314G. Is that correct?
Legal, you're recognized.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And so if this were to pass, it would raise a fourth cause of action that a person whose rights have been violated could file.
Legal, you're recognized.
Yes.
Okay. So does this act expand either procedurally or substantively the claims that a private citizen could file in the event of a violation of a Second Amendment right?
Legal, you're recognized.
I think it expands the group of people who is able to bring a claim because it adds that third classification, any other person or entity that will fairly and adequately represent the interests of those whose rights are protected. So that implies that they don't have to have been subject to the improper action. It kind of opens it up to anyone who's willing to pursue the claim. Whereas currently it's limited to a person who's actually injured by the governmental action or a group that that advocates for preservation of those particular rights. So Second Amendment group. And then it also opens up the pool wider of who they can sue because at least under the current private right of action, this might not be true for the other claims you mentioned, but the 3917 1314G is limited to local government action. And then it also opens up the claims because it's going to be any action based on a law or regulation that has been determined by a court to violate either the Tennessee or United States constitutions. So that the implication is a court is not limited to a Tennessee court or a Sixth Circuit court, whereas in the existing private right of action, it's any ordinance that violates the preemption provisions of 3917 1314.
Representative Bolzo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Ansonia.
Okay, that's all I see for legal. Without objection, we'll go back in session. And next on my list is Representative Capley for the sponsor. The question's been called. We're voting to send House Bill 2689 to full civil. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes prevail. Full civil. Congratulations.